You're standing in a small ancient village. There's no hospital, no birth certificate, no DNA test, no family court, no awkward envelope from a laboratory saying, "Congratulations, we have ruined dinner." A baby has just been born. Everyone knows who the mother is. That part is easy. She was pregnant, she gave birth, she is holding the child. But then comes the question that makes human societies very, very strange. Who is the father? Today, that sounds like biological question. You take a test, you compare DNA, you get an answer. But for the most of the human history, people did not have that answer. They had guesses, they had customs, they had marriage rules, they had gossips, they had resemblance, they had laws, they had threats, they had hope, and sometimes they had absolutely no need to be as certain as we think they were. Because the ancient question was not always who created this child biologically. Very often, the most important question was who is responsible for this child? Who feeds them? Who protects them? Who teaches them? Who gives them a name? Who lets them belong? That difference matters because biology is one thing, fatherhood is also a social job, and ancient humans had to solve that job long before they understood genetics. To understand this, go far back before cities, before kingdoms, before written law, before fields, houses, bank accounts, and royal family trees. You are in a hunter gatherer camp. The group is small, maybe a few dozen people. Everyone knows everyone. There are no private bedrooms with locked doors, no government records, no property office, no surname printed on document. Life is built around the group. Food is shared, children move between adults, older people teach skills, mothers nurse, other women may help care for children, men hunt, gather, protect, repair, teach, and bring food when they can. A child is not raised by one isolated couple sitting alone in the tiny apartment arguing over whose turn it is to change the baby. The child is surrounded by network, a mother, grandparents, aunts, uncles, older siblings, other adults, friends of the family, people who owe each other help. In a world like this, the biological father may matter, but he's not always the only man who matters. In some society, the mother's brother can be extremely important. An uncle is a certain kin through the mother's side. He knows the child is connected to his family. No DNA test required. So, instead of one straight line from father to child, kinship can look more like a web. And in a web, a child survives because many strands hold. This is where ancient human life gets much weirder than modern people expect. In some cultures, fatherhood was not even treated as one man role. Anthropologists have studied societies where people believed a child could have more than one father, not legally in modern paperwork sense, but socially, culturally, and morally. The idea was that the child's body could be formed by contributions from multiple men during pregnancy. So a child might have a main father and also secondary fathers. And those men were not just names. They could be expected to help, bring food, offer protection, support the mother, care for the child, step in if another father died. To a modern mind, this sounds confusing, but to those communities, it could make practical sense. If the one father is good, several possible providers may even be better. More hunters, more support, more adults invested in the child staying alive. For them, uncertainty was not always treated as disaster. Sometimes it was absorbed into a social system. The village did not explode because the family tree looked messy. The family tree was already messy. Human kinship was always been messier than diagrams. But then something changed. Not in one day, not everywhere at once, but slowly in many different parts of the world. Humans began planting fields. They settled in one place. They domesticated animals. They stored grain. They built houses. They counted herds. They marked land. They created wealth that could sit still. And that changed the father question forever. Because the hunting tool can be shared, a meal can be eaten, the story can be passed to anyone. But a field is different, a herd is different, a house is different, stored grain is different. These things can be inherited. And the moment property can be passed down, people begin asking much more dangerous questions. When I die, who gets my stuff? Now, fatherhood is not only about care, it is about inheritance. A man who works a field wants to know who receives that field. A herder wants to know who receives his animals. A powerful family wants to know who continues the family line. A ruler wants to know who sits on the throne after him. And now the answer, well, the whole group will help raise the child, is no longer enough. The question becomes sharper. Is this child mine? Because if the wrong child inherits, then the land, the animals, the house, or the throne moves into another biological line. This is where societies begin building systems around certainty. Not perfect certainty, they cannot get that, but the social certainty, legal certainty, public certainty. Marriage becomes more than a romance. In many societies, it becomes a contract for organizing heirs. A wedding is not two people saying we like each other. It is families saying these children will belong to this line. This property will pass through this household. This alliance is recognized. This woman's children will be legitimate. This man's heirs will be accepted. And because ancient people still could not see DNA, they tried to control the conditions around reproduction. They watched behavior, they created rules, they punished adultery, they valued virginity, they controlled movement, they created ideas of legitimate and illegitimate children. They made laws about inheritance. They developed dowries, bride prices, household authority, family honor, and public reputation. Not all societies did this in the same way. Not every culture had the same rules, and not every woman's life was controlled in the same form. But across many agricultural and property owning societies, one anxiety appears again and again. How do you make fatherhood reliable without a biological test? The answer was usually you do not prove it, you manage it. Ancient people looked for resemblance. The baby has his nose, the child has his eyes. Look at the face, look at the hairs, look at the walk. But resemblance is a terrible legal system. Babies often look like potatoes. And even when they grow up, humans are very good at seeing what they want to see. If a father loves a child, the child looks like him. If a neighbor is suspicious, suddenly the child looks like someone else. People always counted time. When did pregnancy begin? Where was the husband then? Was he at the war? Was he traveling? Was he sick? Was someone else visiting? This helped sometimes. But ancient calendars, privacy, and biology do not always cooperate. So societies added witnesses, household supervision, chaperones, community reputation, rules about who a woman could meet, rules about remarriage, rules about widows, rules about seclusion, rules about punishment. The problem was that none of this actually answered the biological question. It only reduced uncertainty enough for society to keep functioning. This is the key. Ancient people did not know who the father was with scientific certainty. They knew who the society agreed the father was. And sometimes that was good enough. A child born inside a recognized marriage belonged to the husband's household. A child accepted by a man becomes socially his. A child named by the family entered a line. In many places, law cared less about invisible biology and more about public order. Because if every inheritance could be challenged by gossip, society would become chaos. So people created rules that turned uncertainty into an official answer. The father is the husband. The father is the man who acknowledges the child. The father is the one named by custom. The father is the one the household accepts. The father is the one the law says he is. That may not always be biologically true, but it is socially powerful. But for most of history, social truth was the only truth people could actually use. This is why the father question becomes especially explosive among elites. For ordinary farmer, paternity matters because land and animals may pass to children. But for king, paternity can decide the future of the kingdom. A royal child is not just a baby. A royal child is a political weapon wrapped in a blanket. If the heir is legitimate, the dynasty continues. If the heir is questioned, factions form. Brothers fight, uncles plot, nobles pick sides, foreign enemies smile. A doubt about paternity can become a civil war. This is why royal marriages were watched so carefully. Queens were guarded, bloodlines were recorded, births were witnessed, rumors were dangerous. Not because ancient elites were obsessed with the family drama for fun, but because the child in the cradle might one day command armies. The same question that worried a farmer with the field could shake an empire. Whose child is this? But here is the strange part. Even with all the rules, ancient societies still could not make certainty perfect. People had affairs, people lied, people misunderstood timing, people accepted children for peace, people raised children because they loved them, people ignored suspicious because the alternative was worse. Families are not machines. They are emotional, political, practical, messy things. Modern DNA studies of historical populations suggest that recorded fatherhood and biological fatherhood usually matched far more often than people might assume. But not always. There were always exceptions. There were always secrets. There were always children raised by a man who were not their biological fathers. And for most of history, nobody can open a lab report and know. So ancient fatherhood lived in a strange space, half biology, half law, half trust, half performance. Yes, that is too many halves. That is exactly the problem. A man could be biological father and never raise a child. Another man could raise a child and not be biological father. An uncle can be more important than both. A king could claim legitimacy through blood. A village could recognize fatherhood through marriage. A culture could assign more than one father. A law could create certainty where nature had left doubt. Fatherhood was never just one thing. It was a solution each society built around its own fears. In a small mobile band, a fear might be, will the child survive? Then the best answer is many helpers. In farming village, the fear might be, who inherits the field? Then the answer becomes legitimate yes. In a kingdom, a fear might be, who inherits the throne? Then the answer becomes controlled marriage, public births, and royal bloodlines. In a modern court, the fear might be, who is legally responsible? Then the answer becomes documents, tests, and law. The question changes shape because society changes around it. This is what makes the story so human. Ancient people were not stupid for lacking DNA test. They were solving problem with the tools they had. Observation, memory, custom, marriage, ritual, law, reputation, pressure, acceptance, and sometimes denial. A mother was visible. The father had to be made visible by society. So, how did ancient humans know who the father was? Most of the time, they did not know in a way we mean today. They believed, they assured, they agreed, they enforced, they accepted, they argued, they watched, they counted, they built entire instructions to make the answer stable enough to live with. And that is the uncomfortable truth. The question, who's the father, did not become powerful because humans suddenly discovered biology. It became powerful because humans created things that needed heirs: fields, houses, herds, names, statues, thrones. Once a property and power could pass from one generation to the next, fatherhood becomes a political problem, a legal problem, a moral problem, a family problem. A problem large enough to shape marriage, inheritance, sexuality, gender rules, and entire civilization. And yet, underneath all of that, the child still needed the same thing every child has always needed: food, protection, care, teaching, belonging, someone to pick them up when they cried, someone to say, you are ours. Maybe that someone was the biological father. Maybe it was the mother's brother. Maybe it was a husband. Maybe it was several men. Maybe it was a whole group. Modern DNA can answer one question with astonishing precision, but ancient societies were often answering a different one. Not only who made this child, but who will stand beside this child. And for most of human history, that answer was not found in blood, it was built.